All right, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It's a beautiful day outside. Thankfully, we're getting some nice spring, summer-like weather. So again, thank you all for joining. Please mute your computers. So thank you all for joining us for another Reboot Lewis County webinar. We're really excited for today's webinar. Focusing on 6 readiness essentials for reopening small businesses in Lewis County. But first, I want to do some introductions. These Reboot LC seminars are hosted by Lewis County Economic Development and the Lewis County Chamber of Commerce. My name is Brittany Davis. I'm the Executive Director of Lewis County Economic Development. And if we can Kristen introduce themselves.
I am Kristen Octor. I am the Executive Director at the Lewis County Chamber of Commerce.
Shai, you there?
You talking to me?
Can you introduce yourself? No, it's not working? Okay. We also have Cheyenne Syria on the call. She's our Director of Finance and Incentives with Lewis County Economic Development. So again, thank you all for being here with us this morning. As we typically do, we'll have about 20 minutes of the presentation, and then we'll take about 10 to 15 minutes of questions at the end. If you do have a question that pops up during the presentation, you can type it into the chat box and we'll try to get to it at the end of the presentation. So I would like to introduce our speaker today. We are chatting with Heidi Lehman, who is a human resources consultant and owner of Workwise Solutions here in Lewis County. She focuses on assisting small to mid-sized businesses and organizations with things like federal and state labor laws, excuse me, OSHA, paid family leave, and all sorts of human resources issues. She's actually been helping us here at Lewis County Economic Development update all of our employee manuals and benefits. So she has been a great help to our organization. So she'll be talking to us today about how we can all prepare for reopening. As we all know, we are in phase 1 of the reopening stages, and a lot of those businesses in phase 1 have already been operating throughout this whole situation. So now it's time for businesses like salons and restaurants and just other businesses that have been closed to really start thinking about how do they prepare to reopen and bring back their employees. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Heidi Lehman.
Thanks, Brittany, and thank you for having me on the program this morning. I definitely appreciate that opportunity. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot of slides to get through this morning. We're going to be talking about how to prepare your employees and your customers and how to welcome them back into your workspace again. And what is the workforce going to look like beyond day 1? And going forward, we have a whole new opportunity as a business to bring some of those new possibilities into our workforce. I do want to start by saying this. At the beginning of this pandemic, there was a lot to be said about the frontline workers. And I hope that we don't forget the backline workers whose businesses are in phase 3 and 4, who are really, their reopening is contingent on how the rest of us do phase 1, phase 2. So I know a lot of people are kind of done with the COVID thing and want to move on, but please keep our phase 4 businesses in mind, all of those fitness gyms and movie theaters whose livelihoods definitely depend on how we go about living our lives and in our workforces as well. So this morning we're going to be talking about preparing the building. What do I need to do before I have my workers come back? Preparing the workforce. What do I need to tell them before I bring them back into our workplace? What are some ways that I can be rearranging our workplace to meet the criteria for opening? And social distancing plans are probably something that are going to be in our handbooks from now on. We will touch on how to reduce some points, and increasing cleaning is going to be a strong topic going forward. And at the end, communicating for confidence. As you know, a lot of this is dependent, our economy's recovery is dependent on how we view it. And consumer confidence is one of those things that is going to be imperative going forward. So when we talk about preparing the building, obviously to go in with a cleaning staff, make sure everyone has the appropriate personal protective equipment that they need. You're going to want to disinfect all the high touch places and surfaces. This is pretty common and ordinary. One I did want to mention is replacing the HVAC filters might be something that wouldn't be first and foremost on your list, but it is important. I know going forward that this is going to be one thing that OSHA will probably be looking at more and more, as pandemics are definitely something that businesses will have to be looking at in the future. You take an opportunity to update your safety data sheets at this point. If you have any new chemicals that you're bringing into the workforce, they should all have a safety data sheet with them. Preparing the workforce, as you know, there's a lot of change going on, and developing a plan to mitigate those employee fears and concerns is going to be one of our top priorities as business leaders. And people are worried about their health, the health of those around them. They have anxieties about their job or the future of their organization. And in some cases, for phase 4 businesses, it might even be the future of their industry. If I know sports is going to look very different in the future. And so all of those anxieties are something that as an employer, you can help them to mitigate some of those fears going forward. As we are looking at preparing the workforce, employee engagement right now is going to be key. I hope that you've been having virtual meetings along the way. If you have a workforce where part of them are working from home, I'm sure Zoom meetings have been a great part of your past 2 months in dealing with business. If not, say you own a salon and your workforce really was not able to work from home, then I really encourage you to reach out at this point, have a meeting virtually that kind of is going to talk through the process of what it looks like to bring all of the employees back into the workforce. I think that's key to helping them understand what their new environment is going to look like. If you do have to decide who returns to work, say 50% of your workforce can remain at home and continue working in that capacity, but you really need to get people back on the machines and start the workforce turning again. Make sure you're consistent in how you decide who comes back. Are you bringing back the mission critical people? Are you bringing back by seniority? Just be consistent and make sure you convey what those requirements were to your workforce so that there's no discrimination lawsuits down the road. I do recommend you send out a communication letter when it is your workforce is able to return to work, to send out a return to work letter. And I do have some templates. If you don't have anything available, I can certainly upload them in the chat box, and you're welcome to edit them and customize them. And one of the biggest questions that I'm getting right now is, what if people are making more on unemployment insurance right now and they refuse to come back? And you have 2 options at this point. As an employer, you definitely have the right to say your unemployment benefits will be terminated and we need you back at this day. Or you can take a softer approach, send a second letter, really reinforcing all the ways that your businesses have stepped up with the cleaning and to mitigate some of those fears that they may be having about returning to the workforce. But ultimately, if they do not return, you are to report that to the unemployment insurance of New York State so that they understand that if they are brought back to work and they have a new start work date and a new hour that they need to be present at work, then those benefits are no longer available for them. I have heard of a couple businesses that are doing loyalty incentives for those who are hesitant to come back, that if you come back on day one, 30 days later you get X, or 60 days later you get X. So those are some ideas too, if you feel that people are fearful of coming back into the workplace. So lots of new policies and procedures going forward. Temperature screenings are permissible by the EEOC. So keep that in mind. If you do choose to do them, I would suggest that you probably have a supervisor in that position who is taking the temperatures. Try to do them in a place that is private, preferably not in a line in front of the door going into your establishment. If that's your only option, just make sure people are spaced out 6 feet apart. It's up to you if you want to keep the documents and the data from that. Just make sure it's consistent. Either you're keeping it for everybody or you decide not to keep it for everybody. If you do keep it, it goes into their medical files, in their personnel files, and it is confidential. So you're going to want to put a work from home policy in place because this may not be the last pandemic and we may need to pivot at a moment's notice. So I would really highly recommend that you have something in your handbook that states what your work from home policy is from here on out. You might want to look at having a travel policy. If people are super excited to go down to New York City right now, do you let them back in? Do they quarantine for 14 days if they were out of the area? So these are all kind of some suggestions to have ready and on hand going forward. Replacing handshakes with hand waves is now the new professional way to say hello, so keep that in mind as you're bringing people back. You might want to put in a face mask policy as well. If you want to go above and beyond what New York State is recommending, then please put that in writing as well. Time clock entry apps are another thing that a lot of businesses are hopping on right now so that it's one less touch point along the way. So I know Zenefits has an app that everybody logs in on their phone. They keep track of their hours that way so that there really is no paperwork handling so much along the way. So we'll talk a little bit about preparing the workplace now, the good hygiene practices. And again, day one may be overwhelming for some and completely mundane for others. Just keep a positive attitude about your signage, really welcome people back into the workforce cheerfully and help them to understand that you have gone above and beyond in your cleaning efforts and that the fear is not really anything that they have to necessarily worry about, but want to be mindful of going forward. And just let them know that their safety is your #1 priority. And as you know, these came out with the CDC last week. So keep in mind, you can always go there and get some guidance along the way of if you're meeting the safety requirements. A lot of these things we'll be talking with, but I just wanted to point that out, that is available. So there's a lot of ways that you can be preparing workplace. Limit occupancy. If you have a way to have only one entrance and one exit, that is ideal. Plastic barriers for your receptionist, or I saw this morning salons are having plastic barriers between each of their sinks and the chairs. So things like that, that we just want to avoid as much face-to-face contact as possible. Clear signage in your workplace as well. Directions of foot traffic. If you look at the picture right below, there are definitely places online where you can purchase stickers to put on the floor to show your employees or the customers what direction you want people to be walking to avoid all the face-to-face contact. Really be specific about where you want your customers to go and possibly not go. If there's a place that you can avoid contact with other people, that would be ideal. And the workspace layout, no big shocker, we need 6 foot distance between desks And the picture on the right is an office in the Netherlands that recently updated all of their carpet to show that 6-foot distance between everybody. If you walk over to somebody's desk, that there is a line on the floor so that you are aware of the distance that you have between spots. Not that you have to replace all the carpet, but even putting some tape lines down is a great idea just to remind people along the way. Elevators obviously are a little bit more challenging. So I do want to point out that in that picture, really pay attention to the direction of the feet. So it will become common going forward that when you get on an elevator, you face the wall so that we don't have people facing each other. So as you put those kinds of markings down, keep that in mind as well, to face people away from each other. Mobile apps are going to be a huge thing in the workplace now, so that people can log on and be able to have as few touch points as possible. I know salons are having people go online to make appointments now, and when you make that appointment, you all stay online, and then you show up for your appointment, and there really is no exchange of money so much anymore in those kinds of businesses. Limit the inventory is a good practice. If you just put one display item out so your customers know what you have available, and then offer drop shipping as an option from there on out. We'll talk a little bit about reducing touch points. Obviously, doors that open by motion sensors probably are not practical for all of us that have small businesses. So we'll talk about some other options. And reducing those touch points is key to being able to reopen as well. And the individuals can reduce their exposure to communicable diseases by obviously touching as few places as possible. So we'll start with doors. If you can leave the office doors open, that's ideal. If possible, you might even want to consider removing the office doors. Now, please still adhere to public safety codes and building codes. And if it's not possible, then obviously keep the door. But if it is something that you don't think you need, then the easiest solution at this point might just be to take the door off. Replace cleaning wipes next to all the doors if you do have to keep them in, so that someone could just pull a tissue and use that to open the door and then have a garbage bin on the next site. Light switches are a high touch point as well, so you might want to consider some signage indicating that lights must be left on at all times, and then have one person responsible at the end of the day to go all the way around the building and shut all the lights off. Install motion centered lighting is another option, especially maybe in bathrooms. That might be a good idea, so those touch points are a little fewer along the way. As you're welcoming your workforce back, keep in mind that collaboration tools are things that you might want to have either give everybody their own tools, or to continually be cleaning those touch points like shared printers, things like that, that you want to make sure that are just being wiped down quite often. Waiting room seating, if that's something that your business has, option to have plastic chairs that are easy to wipe down. Think about removing chairs and to ensure the 6-foot seating all the way around, and possibly add signage to the chairs that you don't want people to use because it would be too close to proximity. So I thought this was a cute picture of what a probably kindergarten teacher in Asia helped her students to understand social distancing. I also saw last night in Germany, they are putting pool noodles on their hats to help people understand what the 6-foot rule is. So lots of different creative solutions out there. And it doesn't have to necessarily look pretty, but it does have to remind all of us that a 6-foot distance is going to be the new norm going forward. And understanding that dynamic will allow calculation of the total workforce expected and how many people can be back in the office and within how many customers you can let into your workspace all at once. Density monitoring, you're going to really want to pay attention to how many people in your office space or how many customers you're going to let in. If you need to, you can stagger the work shifts or the work breaks so that we don't have large groups of people together. Circulation spaces, reducing face-to-face traffic again by using floor markers to indicate how you want the traffic to flow within your office. I was on a phone call earlier last week with a firm down in Syracuse, a law firm, and he was telling us that all of their traffic patterns are clockwise around the building. So if there was any hallways, it's now a one-way hallway, and really discouraging people walking 2 ways in the same space. Individual seatings, again, you're going to see in these pictures, plastic dividers are going to be pretty common between workspaces. And again, tape on the floor if you need to. Try to repurpose your meeting rooms if that's possible. Use that now as workspace for your employees if you can. Eating lunch together is probably going to be a thing of the past for a little while anyway. But if you do have people working from home, I really encourage you to have virtual office lunches together in which you just say, we're all eating at 1 o'clock, save lunch, and we'll eat together. Because I think that employee engagement is going to be really key, especially if you have a percentage of your employees still working from home and some back in the office. Really try to encourage them to participate in those meetings as well. And communicating with confidence. So I think you have a great opportunity to build your business back even better and to really use this time to build equity within your employees. In addition to the reopening recommendations, employees will need ongoing communication and training going forward, especially when you onboard new people and new staff and orientating visitors to your business. So you can use this opportunity as a grand reopening of your business. Lots of promotional advertising can go out that you're excited to be reopening again. If you do have remote work, I think that will become widely accepted as an alternative to location-based work. And more employees probably will be asking for this. And you might want to be able to have answers to those questions right from day one of what you want your workforce to look like going forward. The good point is that hiring talent will become much easier as you are now, you have access to a global workforce, essentially. Sites like flexjob.com have become very popular. You could be hiring somebody in the Netherlands or Australia to be working on your team from here on out. The other side of that coin is be aware that retaining talent might be a little bit more challenging because they can go work for an employer in France or England and still be working from home. So flip side to both of those points there. Virtual learning, I think, is going to be super exciting in the future. Lots of opportunities that are a little bit more cost effective for employers. If we do have a resurgence, I would have some backup learning that your employees can start doing from home if they need to. Keep those options in mind. That would keep your employees engaged during that time as well. Virtual learning, I think, is going to take off as well. The people that you see with the goggles and they can virtually see other spaces will be super important. And I think that technology is going to really take off from here. So be aware of those opportunities in your business. And telemedicine, I'm sure you've kept up with what this is looking like. And I think it's a decreased healthcare cost for employers. So that's a plus coming out of this pandemic as well. I'm hoping some of those costs will be reduced for our employers. And my last slide, just be aware of building equity right now. So people are the only asset in a company that actually appreciates over time. And excellent business owners really understand that an employee's paycheck is truly not an expense, but rather an investment. And you can use this time as you're preparing to bring everybody back to really build that trust with them and communicate very well to help them understand that their safety is your #1 priority and that you're excited to have them back. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Brittany. And if there are any questions, just place them in the chat box and I will try to answer.
Thank you so much, Heidi. That was really great information. I think, you know, when we talk to businesses, we really focus on, you know, get creative in how you plan to reopen your business. I just had a conversation with a salon yesterday. You know, we have multiple salons here in Lewis County, but each plan, reopening plan, is going to be different based on their building and based on how they're set up. So it's really an opportunity to get creative in how you reopen, but also there's a lot of opportunities to really rethink how you do business. So definitely great information. Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions for Heidi? And there's been some conversation in the chat. If you want the presentation sent to you with Heidi's contact info, please let me know. We are also recording this, so it'll be posted on our Naturally Lewis website and the Chamber of Commerce website.
This is Heidi again, and I can definitely send the templates for any of the letters, or I have a PowerPoint presentation too that you're welcome to send out to your employees, letting them know what the changes are that you've made and to kind of reassure them that your business is ready to reopen and that you've taken the necessary precautions as well.
All right. Well, if we don't have any questions, be sure to get a hold of me or Kristen, and we'll provide you with Heidi's contact info. And as she is a great resource for our small businesses here in Lewis County. So with that said, if we have no other questions, we'll wrap up today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you learned a little bit on how to plan for reopening, and we hope that you have a great day and a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Heidi.